Greetings, Nathan Storm here. On today's episode we're going to look at making some Jamaican patties, which is similar to a mini calzone or a turnover, but it's got like kind of a beef mixture in it and kind of a crumbly breading to it. Stay tuned. Our ingredients for the stuffing are going to consist of 1 tablespoon of curry, 1 teaspoon of garlic, 1 teaspoon of cayenne pepper. I've got a small onion I kind of diced up, about a cup of beef broth, and a cup of panko, and I got my frozen beef here. Feel free to mix up the ingredients for this part a little bit, in case you want something a little bit more mild or a little bit more spicy. So now we're going to cook it. So on the stove top here, nice big pan, crank the heat up nice and hot, and we're gonna cook this like we were making tacos. Just dump all the meat in and we're gonna cook it and brown it. Use either butter or oil if you want. And another thing I should mention here is once it all starts to break up, because this is frozen, the time to add the onions probably would have been now to kind of cook the onions with the beef, but I ended up forgetting and completely browning the beef before I remembered the onions. But now that the beef's brown, we're going to add in our spices. So I'm going to add in my curry powder, as well as the salt and the cayenne pepper. And of course the onions, because I forgot about them. And we're just going to let this kind of cook down. And I'm going to let it cook down longer than you probably will have to, because I wanted to get a little bit more cooking on the onions. Although if you want your onions to have a little bit of bite, just don't cook it as long. And now we're going to add in our beef broth and our panko. And once that's all in, we're going to give it a little bit of a quick stir and then lower the temperature. So now we're going to do a bit of a slow cooking process. So I'm just going to cover that with the lid, and I'm actually probably going to lower the temperature again a little bit later, but we're just going to let that cook for about an hour or so. And here it is afterwards. Give it a little bit of a mix, and there we go. We have perfected our beef stuffing. Now we can move on to making our patties. So I'm just going to set that aside, let it all cool off nice and cool. Our ingredients consist of a tablespoon of curry, a tablespoon of sugar, a teaspoon of salt, 1 cup of butter, 3/4 cups of water, and 3 cups of flour. So now we're going to get out our old mixing bowl, and we're going to proceed to add in our flour as well as our spices and our butter. And then we're going to get out our pastry knife, and we're going to mix this all together so we have a nice kind of crumble, kind of like you're making biscuits. The same thing applies when you're making biscuits, is you really don't want to over mix it. And I think I might have went a little bit further than I probably should have. That, or when I was doing the rolling, it wasn't quite as flaky as I intended it. But I do think that all the ingredients are right, it's just a matter of fine-tuning the technique. And now we're just going to add in our water. Perfect. And then we're going to mix it again. This time though with a wooden spoon. And once you've had enough mixing it with the wooden spoon, and it starts to become too difficult to mix, we're simply going to dump that on our nice clean countertop and then proceed to hand mix it. Like I said before, we don't want to over knead this. We don't want to turn it into just bread. We want it to still be kind of flaky and kind of biscuity. So try not to over mix it. And once it all starts to kind of hold together, we're going to get out the old rolling pin and we're going to proceed to flatten it. Now this actually makes quite a few of these things, so this has to be rolled out rather thinly. So just kind of roll it out as big as you kind of can while it still kind of holds together. So it's a few millimeters thick probably. And once it's all nice, big and flat, and we have it all rolled out, time to actually start making these things. So we're going to get our beef out. Actually did mine the day before, so it's all nice and cooled off and ready to be worked in. So now we'll just put some beef down, and this is the first technique where you just kind of add the filling, flip it over, and then cut around it. Now this technique definitely does work. It's hard to get them all the exact same this way, but it does work. It does work pretty good. In order to get the nice fancy edges, we just use a fork and we just touch up the edges with the fork. And there we go, we have ourselves a Jamaican patty. I did a couple this way, but I decided to do something different for the rest of them. So I decided to use the second technique, which was to use a bowl and trace around with it with a knife, and that gave me a nice round piece of dough that I could use for making my Jamaican patties. I really liked this method more because they all kind of turned out the exact same and was a lot easier, quite frankly. So once we have them all rounded out, we just simply fold them over and then proceed to do our fancy fork finishing with that nice fancy edge. And these were all uniform and kind of the same, and I really liked how they turned out. And all the dough that we removed, we can take all of that and then we can mix that all up and then roll it out flat and do the same thing again. And you do that a few times and you're able to use up all of your dough, making as many Jamaican patties as possible. Now, for the amount of beef that we made up, we probably could have almost had a double batch of the dough. That way we'd have twice as many of them, but either way I think it turned out pretty good. So now I'm just going to cook these up in the air fryer. So I'm just going to load them on the wire rack here. Throw them in the air fryer for 7 minutes. Flip them, cook them a few more minutes, and then we should be good to go. Although I think they're probably better off being made in the oven, probably 350 degrees. We can cook them for about half an hour. I think cooking them lower and slower probably is a little bit better than just cooking them in the air fryer, super high speed, but still turned out pretty good. Tasted alright. I'm not going to be cooking all of them today, so I'm going to put them in a bag and freeze the rest, and that way I can eat them whenever I want. So here we go. Here's our Jamaican patties. Tasted quite delicious, and I was quite happy with them. Let me know in the comments below how you like to make your Jamaican patties, or if you've ever made them before. If you like my content, please like and subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome.